Now, after 70 years, India gets cheetahs again. That historic mission to reintroduce extinct cheetahs in the country. Those visuals that you see of the choppers that airlifted 8 cheetahs, 5 females and 3 males from the airport in Madhya Pradesh. They did land at about 7:55 a.m. this morning at the airport in Madhya Pradesh in Gwalior, from where they were made to go through medical checkups, and only then were they airlifted by the Indian Air Force choppers and taken to their new home, which is the Kuno National Park. Those are visuals coming in from those choppers that you can see in wooden crates. 8 cheetahs, African cheetahs, that have now reached India. Those are earlier shots coming in from the flight when they reached, in fact, the Gwalior airport. From there, they were then transported onto Indian Air Force choppers, and that flight, which is about 20 minutes for them to reach their new home, the Kuno National Park. 8 African cheetahs have arrived in Madhya Pradesh, and they are now going to be released into an enclosed area, which is about 10 kilometers, and that's going to take place at about 10:30 when the Prime Minister is going to be inaugurating that ceremony at the Kuno National Park. Of course, we have with us Swati Tyagarajan, who is here to get us more on this. Swati, double celebrations there. Firstly, we have 8 cheetahs here now in India, also coinciding with the Prime Minister's birthday.
Sure, it's absolutely exciting to have cheetahs, and it is the Prime Minister's birthday. But what I'd like to say is that you can't say that we're bringing back extinct cheetahs, because the Asiatic cheetah in India is still extinct. These are African cheetahs. Within Africa itself, basically the North African cheetah and the Southeast African cheetah are seen as distinct populations. The Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology did a massive genetic study when the Supreme Court greenlighted this project to say that these cheetahs could be brought to see what could potentially be the genetic differences between our Asiatic cheetahs and the African cheetah. And to their surprise, they found that it could be quite a lot, because these populations sort of diverged between 50 to 100,000 years ago, not 5,000 years as it was thought. So there are these genetic differences. So these are African cheetahs being brought to Kuno. So it's not technically that we've brought back extinct cheetahs in India. Cheetahs in general were extinct in India, and we brought cheetahs back, yes, but the Asiatic cheetah in India is still extinct. The only small population that survives now as Asiatic cheetahs is in Iran. India did approach Iran to try and get cheetahs from Iran, but they turned us down. And this project has, of course, then been sort of, they've been pushing for these cheetahs, and finally, 8 cheetahs have arrived. There are apparently 12 more to come from South Africa, and we'll have to see how this goes, because when genetically these populations are diverse, these African cheetahs, things that would be challenging for them would be things like, firstly, acclimatizing to this new ecosystem. Secondly, if there are any viruses or anything that they don't or haven't built any immunity to in India, those will be there. Plus, although of course these are wild cheetahs who already know how to hunt and kill, the prey base here is very different to what they would have hunted and killed in Africa. So they would have to sort of acclimatize to what their prey would be here as well, because hunting is a strategy, it's a learned strategy, and it's not like they just come out of the cage, knowing how to hunt. It's only when they, as the predator, understands the prey, will they be actually able to hunt successfully. So it is a long process. For a while, they're going to be in this 10-kilometer enclosure. There are experts from Africa and India involved in this, really good scientists and doctors who know what they're doing. So I'm sure that everything possible will be done to ensure that these cheetahs get a fighting chance to establish themselves, but there are all these other concerns.
Right, Swati, we also have Neha Sinha, conservation biologist, joining us. Neha, my question to you is, the last cheetah that was hunted down was in 1947. Swati, just explain how genetically different are the Asiatic cheetahs to the African cheetahs. What really sets them apart? And of course, we haven't had that. Of course, they are kind of similar. If you can just tell us how similar they are and how different they are.
Thanks. There are two things over here. An animal that's foreign can be dangerous to Indian wildlife. So such an animal would be known as an invasive species, which can actually cause harm to other wildlife that is that we already have in India. But, because, the Southeast African cheetah and the Asiatic cheetah are somewhat similar in what they do in terms of, they're part of an ecological niche. So, I don't think it's going to be an invasive in that sense. I don't think it's going to be a danger to other Indian wildlife. But yes, as Swati pointed out, disease is an important concern. I know that they've been screened for disease, but their antibodies, their resistance, how they are going to do, how the actual animals are going to do once they are here and free would be a question. The important part that I see though in this entire project is the idea of trying to get something back. So of course the cheetah went extinct, couple of generations ago. It's been 70 years. So, most of us have only heard of this animal. The idea of getting something back is complicated because it's not the same animal. It's kind of like a substitute for what we used to have. Having said that, if we can use the cheetah to save grassland habitat, it's a grassland animal, it's not a forest animal. Again, something that many people don't know. We always assume animals live in forests, but animals live in many different kinds of ecosystems. So the cheetah lives in the grassland ecosystem, and that is critically endangered today. We need to save more grasslands. So if we can have some of these cheetahs and use them to save grasslands, that would be a real conservation success.
8 African cheetahs have been brought into India, and out of which 5 are females and 3 males. We have Swati Tyagarajan with us. We also have Neha Sinha with us. Neha, I'd like to take up this question regarding the security of the cheetahs, and also how will the cheetahs be able to survive this introduction process, because for some reason the survival of the cheetahs is known to be difficult.
You're right. Not only is their survival difficult, it's also difficult for them to breed. They've never really bred well in captivity, for example. So we know that they're going to be inside a fenced enclosure for at least about 30 days, which is really not the same as being kind of free. So they're going to be tightly monitored, almost like a safari or a zoo setup. And if they keep running away, the action plan says that they're going to be further fenced in. So, it's kind of like constant monitoring and making sure they eat. Now the thing is, this particular place they're being brought into, Kuno, has cheetahs rather than black bucks. So traditionally cheetahs used to actually hunt black bucks, which is different from the cheetal, which is a deer. So black buck is an antelope, but this Kuno only has mostly has cheetal for them to hunt. I'm sure a few of them are going to die, which is the cost of any kind of relocation or translocation project. But the bigger question really is, are we going to keep them, in these enclosures, and for how long? Because, if we want the animal to be free and wild, then, we need a larger area than Kuno National Park for them to be free and wild, because, they run quite a bit. They form these loose herds, coalitions amongst each other, and each cheetah requires a lot of space. So this is only going to make sense if we are able to open up new areas for them. The way to go about this, as I said earlier, would be to try to bring in more grassland and scrub areas for the cheetah to run free in. Right now what we have is like a safari setup where the animal is in an enclosure and it's being watched constantly.
Right. Swati, the big cats will be kept in that enclosure for about a month before they're released into the wild. They'll have to, also coexist with leopards and also compete with tigers for food.
Well, yeah, so to take on from something that Neha said, one of the things is, if you compare these cheetahs, the African cheetahs, to the Asiatic cheetahs, side by side, if you weren't a big cat expert, they would probably look similar. But the Asiatic cheetah, for example, had longer, thinner legs, it had coarser fur, it was paler in color, the rosettes were smaller. So these were all obviously qualities that the Asiatic cheetah had to fit in their environment here in India, what they were used to, which was grassland and scrubland environment. The African cheetah The interesting thing about why we don't have to stress too much in terms of how the African cheetah and the Asiatic cheetah differ in that sense is, for example, let's say tomorrow the tigers disappear from India. We'd never be able to bring Siberian tigers here, for example, to fit into this, you know, in India, because their habitats are so incredibly different, because Siberian tigers are sort of built for the taiga in Russia. You know, side by side, if you kept a Siberian tiger and a Bengal tiger, you'll see that there are no stripes on the front of the Siberian tiger's legs, so they look quite distinct. They have a second sort of round of ruff around their necks, grow and a second coat like in winter, so very distinct from that perspective, and you'll never be able to do it. But here with cheetahs, that much of a difference in terms of habitat is if it's a grassland, scrubland area, that much of a challenge in terms of habitat is not there. But as Neha said, they need vast spaces in which to move and run. Cheetahs cover enormous territories, because for most part, like the females are solitary, you'll have mothers with cubs, and then you have the males that form sort of loose coalitions, and they spread out over this area, and they need these vast spaces also to do what they do, which is to chase down and trip the prey and kill them. So, you know, Kuno, the whole park is about, I guess, 1,200 square kilometers. Of that, you know, how much is really grassland? The one thing I will say is for the cheetahs in Africa, you do get them in the higher altitudes in the Sahara, but this is the northern African cheetah, and they're quite different from the southeast African cheetahs. You also get them in sort of in Iran, where they're in very sort of dry but quite rocky, hilly terrain, and the Asiatic cheetahs, you know, sort of negotiate that terrain better. Right. So we have to see how these cheetahs sort of fit, and this is where, when you come to Kuno, with leopards, definitely resident leopards, there's going to be a problem, because in Africa as well, you know, leopards are a major problem. Cheetahs in national parks with leopards and lions lose 90% of their cubs. There's a 90% cub mortality there in Africa in protected areas where you have leopards and lions. And here you get transient tigers as well in Kuno, because it's a sort of corridor between Ranthambore and the other tiger areas in Madhya Pradesh. Right. So if these cheetahs are going to be in bigger and bigger enclosures, but still sort of be enclosed and protected, they won't be free-ranging cheetahs, so we'll have to see how this is balanced.
Right, Swati, even after initially they're going to be in that enclosed area, eventually they will be released into the wild. However, they will continue to monitor these cheetahs, because their safety is the first and foremost priority. And now those African cheetahs have arrived in Madhya Pradesh. They arrived at about 7:55 a.m. this morning on a special flight which took about 10 hours. And from there they went through medical checkups before they were airlifted and taken to the Kuno National Park. We have with us Swati Tyagarajan, and also we have with us Neha Sinha joining us. Neha, well, you know, the fastest animal in the world is here. Also, you know, cheetahs are not, you know, they don't pose any threat as far as humans are concerned. But what about the other animals in the vicinity?
There are no records, you're right, of cheetahs hurting people. I mean, leopards and tigers, you know, there's been conflict with people, but cheetahs usually are considered a little small, or they don't confront people. But leopards, as Swati said, are going to be an issue, because leopards are known to take away their prey. You know, even an animal like a jackal, which is more like a scavenger, if it comes in a pack, it can take away the prey of a cheetah. So, you know, historically also in India, cheetahs were never very abundant. It's not like the leopard population, which is rather high, because other animals do take away their prey, and you know, they also breed very slowly. We have to constantly monitor and watch, and many would say this is not a natural state to constantly be monitoring and watching, because in the wild, technically they should be, you know, it's like a survival of the fittest, as they say, and that's why I said we need more land for the cheetah. So if you have more land for the cheetah, and the cheetah is able to kind of have the proper habitat it needs, which is grassland, you know, for it to run and for it to catch its prey, it should be fine. But right now, Kuno is about 800 square kilometers. It's really small for the cheetahs currently. So this is going to make sense if we have more grasslands. So if you have more grasslands, you will definitely have conflict with leopards and cheetahs, but hopefully it can balance itself out in the long run. Right. So that would be key, getting more habitat.
Right. Swati Tyagarajan, Arjun Kupalaswamy, a conservation scientist, has pointed out that cheetahs in India perish for a reason, that's human pressure, which has only gotten worse in the last 70 years. So how do we ensure the success of this project?
So there are two things here. One is that what happened with the Asiatic cheetahs in a big way is that they were for a long time historically prior to the British coming were used sort of as coursers, which means they were captured in the wild and then taken in, and sort of they tried to breed them to use them almost like hunting dogs. So the Maharajas would sort of set them loose, and they would kind of run down prey, and then the deer would be taken from the cheetah, and that's how they did it. They like literally used them as hunting dogs. In fact, in some of our colloquial languages, we call the cheetah, if you translate the name of the cheetah, it kind of translates into hunting dog or something to do, with that. So that's number one. So many cheetahs were sort of captured from the wild for this, so that put a lot of pressure on their population. Of course, hunting, cheetahs were hunted. They were seen as sort of vermin almost, like by the British. The British sort of declared them vermin in some sense. It used to be ₹8 to kill a cheetah cub and ₹12 to kill a cheetah adult. So that was a major problem. Then when the British came, a lot of the land was taken over for tea and coffee plantations. So this made it very, leopards will adapt to this. Leopards will keep adapting to a change in sort of the scenario of the ecosystem. For example, we have enough leopards here in Bombay City. They will live within a concrete jungle as long as they have a little bit of rats or dogs or whatever it is that they eat. Cheetahs totally will struggle. They're a very niche animal. So this is something about nature we need to understand. Some animals are incredibly niche animals, which means they kind of fit particular ecosystem and ecosystem niches, and that makes them more vulnerable to the march of time in a sense, and that's why we have evolution, and that's why we have certain species going extinct and other species sort of, as Neha said, survival of the fittest. The animal that can sort of adapt will be the animal that will sort of go forward. So cheetahs did not have that ability. The other issue with cheetahs is they are built for speed. This is an animal that can accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. At top speed, they can reach 98 kilometers per hour. Even though they're built kind of lean, they're incredibly powerful animals. Those long tails act as rudders. When they run, it kind of steers their course. That long line of black on their face stops reflection, from hitting their eyes, so they can see the prey in that speed while they're running. So you would think this would be a formidable predator. And they are, and they can catch their animal, but their vulnerability is that their bodies heat up incredibly fast because of this speed. So that gives them that burst of speed for a very short amount of time, and if they can kill within that short amount of time, then they can. If not, it takes them a while to recover, to build up to that energy level to run again. That's number one. Number two, when they
Swati, we will just come back to you. We're just taking a very short break at this point in time. The cheetahs are here. They're in their new home, the Kuno National Park, where they will be released into an enclosed area, and that will take place only once the Prime Minister reaches. He's on his way, and we also know that the big cats haven't eaten anything on that entire 10-hour flight. They'll only get to eat once they're out in that enclosed area. So we'll get to 8 African cheetahs have been brought to the Kuno National Park. They first landed at the airport in Gwalior. From there, they were airlifted by the Indian Air Force and taken to the Kuno National Park. The Prime Minister on his birthday will now be releasing them into a quarantined enclosed area, which is about 10 kilometers. We have Swati Tyagarajan as well as Neha Sinha with us. Swati, you were talking us through the challenges that these big cats will be facing. For once, that we know that these cats haven't been fed on the way. That 10-hour long flight, and after that for about an hour they waited at the airport before they were brought to during their health checkups that were being conducted, and now they're at the national park. They'll have to wait for the Prime Minister to release them in that enclosed area before they can be fed.
Yeah, I guess that would be what they would have to do. Plus, just remember, they must have had a pretty strong drug in their system to knock them out for this long. So I would say that they would have to be kind of careful about how much they feed them, and so they will probably be monitored to see how they're doing, because they would have just kind of come out of that drugged situation. And normally in the wild, if they're tranquilized, it's pretty quick for just an examination, and then they're given another drug which brings them out of it immediately. This because they were going to have a long trip, and these are animals that do not respond well to stress, and they were kept in these really tiny containers, not because that was a cruel thing to do, but because it was actually to save them from grief. It's safe. One of those animals came to earlier that they wouldn't run against the bars of a cage or the bars and hurt themselves. So this was to keep them confined and dark so that they would stay less stressed. So, and this drug would still be in their system for a while, I'm assuming. So they will be monitored. Experts have flown with these animals. Vets have flown with these animals. Our vets will be here. As far as the science in terms of that goes, they will be monitored very closely. And I suppose they would know what is the best time and what to feed them and how much, because it, maybe on the first day, it's really disorienting for these animals. Imagine if you were sort of knocked out and put in a crate and flown, a couple of 1,000 kilometers out of your home into a completely new place. So, it would have to be handled very, very gently. The point that I was making prior to this was why they would struggle if there were other cats in the vicinity, or even, as Neha said, big packs of jackals and things, is because when these animals run down the prey, they use so much energy, and once they kill the animal, it's literally like they're tapped out. Often you will find, unlike lions and tigers, after a cheetah kills, it will be sitting near what it has killed, panting incredibly heavily. That panting that they do is to actually cool their system down, because the speed heats up the blood in their bodies. So in that moment post the kill is when they're most vulnerable. So even if a small animal like a jackal or a couple of jackals come to the kill, the animal, literally, the cheetah has no energy left. It's tapped out, so it can't get up and fight and defend its kill. It's one of the reasons that in Africa, in many areas, the Bushmen or the San people of Africa, the indigenous peoples of Africa, sometimes if they were desperate and didn't have meat, would actually track a cheetah, wait for it to kill, and then chase the cheetah off of a kill and take the kill for themselves. So this is when they're most vulnerable, just post a kill, when they've literally tapped out and have no energy left. So if you have leopards and tigers in that vicinity, it's going to be a problem. Plus, we know many cheetahs are killed by lions in Africa as they are by leopards. So that is another problem, where they will be outright killed by other big cats.
Right, they'll have to coexist with the leopards, and the big challenge being tigers as well, like you were mentioning earlier. Like we were discussing, that these these cheetahs are genetically different from the Asiatic cheetahs that were in India about 70 years ago. We've also discussed how, what sets them apart, what sets the African cheetahs and the Asiatic cheetahs apart. And Swati, you were mentioning that the Asiatic cheetahs are now only found in Iran.
Yes, and I think it's what the number in Iran is today, maybe 50, if that. So if they continue to survive in Iran, then we'll still have a population of Asiatic cheetahs. Otherwise, we won't. In fact, in India, the last sort of Asiatic cheetah died in an Indian zoo I think in the 1970s. So we don't even have sort of like a living example of an Asiatic cheetah in India in a zoo, like in a captive situation. We don't have that. So that's why I said the Asiatic cheetah, for all intents and purposes, is extinct in India. Not in the world, because there's still a population in Iran, but our Asiatic cheetah population is still extinct. These are African cheetahs that are being reintroduced, and that's a very interesting term. The reason they've used the term reintroduced is because, according to the Indian Wildlife Act, which was established in 1972, the Wildlife Protection Act, it is illegal to bring any animal that is not indigenous to this country into India. That is the law. And that is why if we said introduced, it would be illegal. So that is why the word reintroduced is being used. Technically, according to the Wildlife Protection Act, this shouldn't be allowed, and which is why we needed the Supreme Court to sort of green light this project. So from that perspective, the Asiatic cheetah is still extinct. What they have done is brought another species of cheetah to India, called it a reintroduction, but technically it's just a new species of the cheetah in India. And hopefully, I really hope for the animal's sake, that they do well, do acclimatize, and do manage to do all right in Kuno.
Right, Swati, you were mentioning, in fact, the last Asiatic cheetah that was shot down was in Chhattisgarh in 1947, and of course they have gone extinct. It's been over 70 years now. Neha, my next question to you would be, they're going to be in that enclosed area for about a month, then they'll be released out into the wild. How much time would it take for them to adapt and then eventually be able to breed?
I think it depends a lot on what are the other animals around them which are like rivals to them. So, I'm sure the cheetahs will be able to hunt. But, it's worth pointing out that the enclosure for the cheetahs had leopards in them till a few days ago. So, they made these enclosures for cheetahs and 3 leopards came just by themselves and they had to be driven out using elephants. It was quite funny, but that's because, the Indian forest and Indian wilderness is full of various kinds of animals, and there are definitely leopards there. There are no tigers in Kuno right now, but you never know. Tigers are a free-ranging animal. There have been tigers coming to Lucknow and Bhopal and many other places. You may have tigers here in the future. So how the cheetah does will also depend a lot on what rivalry, what are the rival, the other predators. So cheetah is not the apex predator. It's definitely like way down on the list of predators because it's smaller and also it's hunting alone. And so we will have to wait and watch to see how the other leopards and the other animals let them live. And even though we are monitoring them, they are wearing these satellite collars so that scientists can track their movement. Another really big threat that I am concerned about is that of illegal poaching. So India does have a thriving kind of illegal market of skins and claws and all of that. So tigers get poached, leopards get poached, lions get poached for their skins. It's part of a thriving international illegal trade. A lot of these go to China and Thailand. So, the cheetah can also be poached because it's also, historically it's been poached. So how we protect the cheetah also from this kind of illegal activity is also going to be a question, especially in the future. And as I said, it is a slightly smaller animal. It's not known to be very, violent or aggressive towards people. I would assume it would be easier to kind of bring down a cheetah by a person than, say, a tiger. And given that we have all this poaching, this is going to be a huge concern.
Absolutely. So, like Neha was mentioning that they will be monitored, they will be wearing those bands in order to protect them against poachers as well as other animals. Well, 8 cheetahs are here, 12 more to come by as early as the 1st of November, but the government plans to introduce about 50 of them over the next 5 years in different parks and different states of the country. With that, we're taking a very short break. Lots more coming up on the other side. A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7 and it's quite a historic day. After 70 years, India gets a cheetahs again. 8 cheetahs have arrived in India this morning at 7:55 on a special flight. 8 cheetahs, which means 5 females and 3 males, landed this morning at the airport in Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh. They were airlifted by the Indian Air Force in those choppers and taken to the Kuno National Park, which is their new home. And here the Prime Minister will be releasing them into an enclosed area. This will be a quarantine enclosed area. Over the next 1 month is where they'll be living. And of course, from there on, they will be released into the wild, but that they'll have to wait it out for about a month or so. So we have with us Swati Tyagarajan joining us. In fact, Swati, those 8 African cheetahs that arrived in Madhya Pradesh early this morning, they haven't been fed on that flight. And why is that?
Well, essentially because they would not have woken up on that flight. It's a long flight. These animals react very, very badly to stress. So they would have been knocked out completely so that they would just sleep through the entire flight. and would have just sort of maybe have, you know, come to, and they'd be groggy. So they'll have to be monitored very closely. These are very, you know, it's quite a strong drug that's probably in their system, but the vets do know what they're doing, as do the scientists, and so they will monitor them very closely to see how well they're doing when, you know, they come out of that drug situation. They'll also have to see if they're okay, because you can't, what if you feed them immediately and that causes some problem, you know, with digestion, or they vomit or whatever it is. So they will keep an eye on these animals. But just remember, for us it seems like it's a big shock. Oh, they haven't eaten for a whole day. In the wild, these animals do not hunt and kill and eat every day. They probably go several days sometimes if they don't hunt without food, or they just hunt something small and eat that. So it's not like us that need 3 meals a day. That is not how they function. So from that perspective, the doctors, the vets, the scientists do know what they're doing. But the point that I'd like to make is, and then I'm sure, you know, the experts that we'll have on the show can add to it, is my concern in a big way is, of course, it's a celebratory thing and it's already happened and the cheetah are here, and I really hope for the cheetah's sake that they do okay, because, you know, these are living animals, sentient animals, and I really hope that they do okay. But my concern is, you know, we are now talking about grasslands and we're talking about cheetahs being in the grasslands. Grasslands in India have been considered wastelands for the longest time. They literally call wastelands in many of our documents, and therefore grasslands across India have been taken over for either agriculture or development. So they're diminishing habitats. We have fantastic animals in India, endangered, critically endangered animals, like the great Indian bustard, the Bengal florican, chinkaras, black buck. These are Schedule 1 animals in India who are struggling to survive because the grasslands are just vanishing, and nothing really has been done in a big way to either bring attention to them, or to, like, you know, reintroduce them, or like really spend the kind of money that it requires to make sure that grasslands are okay and these animals survive. So from that perspective, this project, which is very, very, very expensive project, crores and crores going into establishing Project Cheetah, that to an animal that's not the Asiatic cheetah, which is not our cheetah that went extinct, that is being brought back. That is, you know, these are questions that do need to be asked and discussed, not to say that these animals and this project shouldn't happen. It's just, why haven't we paid attention to what we've had in our grasslands, the animals that we've had, and hopefully in this discussion, because we've brought cheetahs back and the attention is now on the cheetahs, we can forward the case of grasslands to say, people, grasslands are supremely critical habitats and ecosystems, and, you know, if through the cheetah we can talk about bringing back our grassland animals like the bustards, the floricans, the black buck, I think that's an important discussion to have.
Right. We also have Anish Andheria joining us, the president of Wildlife Conservation Trust. Well, Anish, just like Swati just pointed out, you know, these cheetahs are different. These are not the cheetahs that we had 70 years ago. Those were Asiatic cheetahs. The last one was shot down in Chhattisgarh in 1947. The ones that have come in now, the 8 that have arrived, are the African cheetahs. What sets them apart?
Actually, it's not much of a difference. Unlike many species where the separation has happened many million years ago, then they branch out into very, very different kind of lineages and species. But in the case of cheetah, research and DNA studies have shown that there is hardly any difference between the Iranian cheetah, the cheetah that is the Asiatic cheetah that's existent now. There are only less than about 30 animals in Iran. So between that animal and also the skins that we have in India, from there the DNA has been extracted, and we have checked with the African counterparts, and there is hardly any difference between the two. So yes, it's an African cheetah, but it is believed that cheetahs in India also came in from Africa via Afghanistan, Pakistan, and there were cheetahs in Pakistan as well. So this is a contiguous population, and fortunately they are not very different. So that way I don't see there is any big issue as far as that is concerned, especially, so for instance, if you have to bring African elephants into India, because there are elephants in India, now that is a issue, because then African elephants are very different from what we have in India, but not in the case of cheetah. So that way we don't have much to worry. And as far as the grassland habitat is concerned, I agree with what Swati was saying. In fact, I have been saying it all the while that a cheetah should become an ambassador for bringing back our lost grasslands. So the next big thing that the government should do, and ride the wave, because this is a very, very important moment for India. See, when Project Tiger was launched in 1973, a similar thing happened. The entire world came together and we brought back the tiger, which is many, many times, more than 6 times larger than the cheetah. We could bring the tiger back from the brink. And so this is another very, very big high for the country. And I think we should ride that wave and expand our conservation movement to other species which have not had any voice. So cheetah is iconic, but cheetah can actually help many other species that are dwindling, especially those living in the grassland. So for me, this is the first tick, the box has been ticked, that the animals have come in. But the bigger challenge is to see how we can secure the landscape which the cheetah can call their own. And that those are landscapes which are rolling grasslands, which are, some arid areas also, which is also home to the chinkara, the black buck, the great Indian buster. And the buster is going because there are hardly any grasslands left. The largest grasslands we probably have is about 150 square kilometers. Now that's not where you can conserve species. So once cheetah comes back, we can allocate spaces which are about 2,000 minimum square kilometers. I'll be happy to see a 4,000 square kilometer cheetah park. And remember, cheetahs are much smaller. They hardly ever get into direct conflict with human beings, which means there is hardly any attack reported on human beings. All the conflict that happens is because they can take goats and sheep. They don't even go for cows and buffaloes because they are just too big for them. They don't have that canine, the size that can actually throttle a large animal. And so there will be some conflict. But because they are like this, it is possible, and because our culture is amazing, and you know how the Bishnois live, where they actually, there are Bishnoi women who have breastfed chinkara babies. So when you have that, and you have a cheetah, it is possible to have people and cheetahs living close to each other. In India, there are several places where tigers and people live together. So I am hopeful that we don't create a sacrosanct habitat. We don't need to relocate people.
Right, Anish, we'll just come back to you on this. We have Anurag joining us from the Kuno National Park. Anurag, the Prime Minister is expected there any minute now to release the 8 big cats that have arrived in this morning. They will be, in fact, released into that enclosed area, that quarantined enclosed area. Take us through that area exactly, whether, we've heard that it's about 10 kilometers big. How long will they be there?
Yes, Divya, we are just outside the Tiktoli gate, and we have Morvan village and Tiktoli village. We have a big gate welcoming cheetahs, and if my camera person can just pan you down, because remember Madhya Pradesh is a tiger state, and now they are welcoming, the board says welcome to the land of cheetahs. So the property prices have jacked up in this area. And one more thing, I think most of the wildlife experts must be worried about, because we are seeing lots of VVIP movement because of today Prime Minister Narendra Modi is here, but lots of VVIP movements with hooters, with buses, and lots of ho hangama here in Kuno, Palpur. And these wildlife experts must be worried about this, because as everybody was pointing out that they are, cheetahs are they're not like other big cats. So there's a problem, and this is a long-term project. So they will have to keep them safe, and that's why they have few watchtowers, they have CCTV surveillance under 5 kilometer of area, and any moment from now on the Prime Minister will release 2 cheetahs, and after that 1 cheetah will be released, and it will take at least till December because as far as the Madhya Pradesh government is concerned, they are not sure, but still they are hopeful that around December the park will be open for visitors, that they can actually go inside and see the cheetahs.
Right, so the Prime Minister is on his way. We have heard that he has landed in Madhya Pradesh. He is on his way to the Kuno National Park. So that is when on his birthday, especially that historic day, it's the double celebrations with the cheetahs arriving and the Prime Minister also arriving at the Kuno Park to release them in that enclosed area. They will be staying there for about a month. Let me get Anish in here. Anish, they will be staying there, but in order for them to survive, this reintroduction process, the project that we have on. What is the reason why the survival of the cheetahs is known to be so difficult?
Well, so every species is different. And in fact, so for instance, tigers have gone through much more poaching, much more hunting, but they are hardier and therefore they have bounced back because they breed prolifically. Their gestation period is just 3 months and a mother will give birth to 4, and therefore the population bounces back rapidly. In cheetahs all over the world, in fact in Africa also, cheetahs are not doing too well. You don't have a single population in Africa which is more than 100-150 animals, which means they are even in stress, even in the best habitats that they have. So it is a genetic wiring of that animal. Plus, remember that the grasslands that they need, the extensive grasslands, that's not there. Plus, wherever they are the smallest of the cats. So you have the lion, which is much larger, more than 200 kgs. A male can be more than 250 kgs. Then you have the leopard. In Africa, you have the spotted hyena, which hunt in packs, and they are a terror. So you are living with so many other large carnivores, which can easily kill your cubs. So there is huge amount of infant mortality. So 90% of the cubs that are born in Africa are killed by either other species or by something or the other. And they are tiny. They are less than a kg when they are born. They can easily be swallowed even by a python or a snake, or even a large sized bird like an adjutant stork can kill them. So they are vulnerable during that first 1.5 years. And so in India too, we have to be careful. Therefore, these enclosures were built so that they can be monitored to see how, and our people, obviously we have support from Africa. They are the best. Laurie Marker and her group and people from South Africa are extremely good. So they will also, I'm sure some of them will stay back, and they will keep monitoring, and they will pass on the knowledge to our Indian counterparts. And then once they are sure that the males are ready to be released, they will be released in a coalition. So these 3 males, I'm sure, have been living together even in Namibia. So they will be living together, and those males will be the first to go out of this enclosure. Once they stabilize a territory outside, once they start territory is an area where they are found for 80% of the time. Once that starts happening, and they are expecting that because the females are in the enclosure, the males are not going to go too far because they will keep searching for a mate. So they will come back to these areas is what they are expecting. But again, remember, this is the first time it's happening. So these are all conjectures. This is even what the experts are saying. So if they have a territory and they start hunting well, is when they will probably release a couple of females, and some females will always be kept inside the cage as insurance, because remember that the males have a larger area. The females are normally more nomadic. They don't have a territory as such. They move, and that's when the male follows the female. They take her hostage. They mate with her. The female will give birth, and the male will then they will look out for another female. So that's the way their social structure
back to you. Let's just go across to Anurag, who is outside the Kuno National Park. Anurag, a lot of excitement there in Madhya Pradesh. You said many people gathering there. Of course, the Prime Minister expected to reach there any minute now to release those 8 big cats that arrived early this morning. They are in fact have been brought in those wooden crates. They will be released into this enclosed area, which is about 10 kilometers. They'll be kept there for about a month and then finally released out into the wild. So just the kind of preparations that have been made and the kind of excitement on the ground right now.
Yes, Divya, a big dome was created there in Karahal ground, and SHG members from all across the state are there, have reached there, and all the VVIPs, all the ministers, all the senior officials are there inside the dome. And any moment Prime Minister Narendra Modi will release the cheetahs, and then he will come to the Karahal ground to address the SHG workers who came from all across Madhya Pradesh. And now the all excitement is because we I beg your pardon. So everybody is excited that when they can see those visuals, but actually tourists to go inside and visit those big cats can actually happen in the month of December, and 12 more cheetahs will also come before 1st of November or on 1st of November as per Madhya Pradesh government, which is also the foundation day of the state.
Right, Anurag, they're joining us from the Kuno National Park. He's right there outside. The Prime Minister is expected there any minute now to release those big cats into this enclosed area. We have with us also joined by Bahar Dutt. Very good morning, Bahar. This is an environment journalist, Bahar Dutt, joining us. Bahar, many challenges when these cheetahs that have been brought in. There are problems of poaching. Also, another problem that they could be facing is once these big cats are released out into the wild, what if they have to be brought back while capturing these cheetahs to retrieve them in case they go outside the boundaries of the park? So those are some of the challenges. What are the other challenges that you think that one needs to look out for when there's this very huge ambitious project that we have at hand, and various problems considering that cheetahs, the survival of the cheetahs is in itself very difficult?
Well, thank you, Divya, for asking that question, and a very good morning to Anish and Swati as well. Good to see everybody here. Just to give you a very different perspective, I actually managed to get inside Kuno. What you're seeing right now is, reporters are lined outside the park. So I actually managed to go inside the park where the cheetahs are going to be released. This was a month ago when the PM security was not there. I spoke to the people, the Saharia tribals, the most backward tribe which is found in India. They've been relocated. They've been asked to move outside the park. This happened 18 years ago. And one of the tribals said to me, we were asked to move for the lion, and you're telling me that cheetahs are being brought in from Africa. So I don't want to be a naysayer. I don't want to sound like a pessimist. I think it's extremely good that the Prime Minister is leading from the front, but I just wish that we were doing it for some of our own wildlife and our own biodiversity, which is as threatened. And some of the flagship species of the grasslands today in our own country, whether it's the great Indian bustard or it's many other species, which our wildlife experts may have shared with you today. I wish the Prime Minister was celebrating those species. Perhaps we could turn our attention on the existing wildlife that we have and the existing state of environment in the country.
Exactly what Swati Tyagarajan was also bringing to light. Another question being, how will the cheetahs interact with other animals at that national park in Madhya Pradesh? With that, we're slipping to a very short break. Lots more coming up on the other side.